Hey, what's up, everybody? Listen, before we get into today, I just want to say something like this is the theme of today. Your message matters. Like, that's the theme today. You may not feel that way, but it does. Your message matters. Your what you have to say to the world matters. Your story matters. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We are waiting. Let me see. He's texting me back here. There we go. We are waiting for a special guest to join us. If you're on, you probably know who that is. It'd be weird if you were on this and didn't know who the special guest is because it says it in the title, y'all. But he's going to be joining us here in just a little bit. Jonathan Milligan. And before we get into it, I thought it'd be fun to do something new. So we're actually going to record this for the podcast. We're going to record this live. What that means, typically I record these when it's just me and the other person, and I record these over Zoom. And there's no considerations of like, well, we need to make sure to call people to do this or leave something in the chat. Like we can't do any of that because I'm recording it for the podcast. So we'll do that at the end. We will use your questions. And hey, Phil, and I'm going to take your questions. I'm going to answer some, and I'm going to ask some of Jonathan. So if you have questions about what we're talking about, drop them in the chat. I will probably ask them as we go. Just know that hey, Jonathan, what's up, dude? It's just because we have a flow because we're using this for the podcast. I'm going to finish my whole thing and then I'll talk to you, dude. Because we have a flow, we want to make sure that we don't like interrupt that with a question that maybe is not germane, doesn't flow well. So we'll answer those at the end. We'll probably end the podcast part and then dive into the interview. So as you can see, the infamous or famous, I don't know, however you think about him. Phil Carr just said 2 of my favorite guides in one place. So this is like heaven for Phil today. What's up, buddy?
What's going on? I'm
So
so
we're totally
excited to be
live.
here.
We're totally live, so we don't get to do any of the stuff that we would normally do. So I'm just going to ask you live. Like y'all are going to get to see behind the scenes. What's your hard stop today, bud?
I would say probably around 3 o'clock if possible, but
That's good. We'll go 45, 50 minutes. I don't have a specific time, but that'll allow us to just kind of go and not be super rushed. So anyway, how you been?
I'm good. It's been a crazy week. I tell you what, it's been a crazy couple of months.
You have something going on, right?
Yeah, somebody forgot to tell me how much time, effort, and energy it takes to launch a book. But guess what? It's so worth it. We're having so much fun.
That's awesome, man. Well, you look good.
Yeah, I'm doing well.
Yeah, you look good, man. That's awesome. We haven't actually seen each other, gosh, physically in years. It feels like.
Yeah, it's been at least a year, maybe a little bit longer since probably hanging out. What would that be in Nashville?
Yeah, Nashville. So we haven't seen each other physically in forever. Virtually, I guess we saw each other on Pete's Mastermind, month or I guess it was like 2 months ago. I don't remember that. There was like that whole week there. I don't know if you knew this, but I think that was on a Friday. And I was on so much pain medication that Friday that I remember we were doing one of the hot seats, and I told the people, I was like, I have my notes here for what I wanted to talk about, and their bullet points. I have no idea what the first bullet point even means. And I was like, I was loopy that day. And I'm so glad that he gave us the replay because there were so many things where I was like, when one of the guys was talking, I won't mention Roland Fraser's name, but I have no idea what he said. Literally no clue. I listened to the whole thing and had no clue what he was talking about, in part because I was on like intense pain medication. So anyway.
Well, you're looking good now, my friend, and hope all is well.
Yeah, surgery went well. I'm on the other side of that. So again, guys, like I said, we're going to record this, and you guys are going to get to listen in to Jonathan and I record this podcast. Again, drop your questions. First of all, let us know where you're from. I always just like to know that, as you guys know. Also want to make sure that I tell you guys, since you're on here, you're going to be the first to be able to get this because this podcast won't go live for, I don't know, some number of days. I think it goes live this weekend. If you type messagebook type message book. Robbie's probably set that up 1 word, 2 words. You could spell it out in 16 different ways. I don't think it works if you type it in Japanese or Italian, but if you type message book, then we'll send you a direct link to be able to get Jonathan's book. Because I'm promising you that like in about 20 minutes you're going to be dying to get it. By the end of this interview, you're gonna buy like at least 2 copies. I don't know who the second one's even going to be for. You're just going to buy 2 copies. So type message book and we'll send you that link. We'll DM that to you. Again, drop me a note and let me know where you're from, and so I know who's on. Ask those questions, and then I'm going to just, again, you guys are behind the scenes. So what I'm going to do is be silent for about 5 seconds. That way, when we download this video and do all of our magic that I don't know a whole lot about, we'll know where to cut it off. And Jonathan, I'm just going to welcome you, and then I'll do an intro separately.
Is my volume okay? And are you getting any feedback on your end? Because I can put an earpiece in if I need to.
No. In fact, that reminds me, one of the things I always have to do, and I skipped it because I got on late because I had to take our new puppy out, is I always turn the volume down on my computer because my microphone and my computer are about 6 inches apart. No, you sound great.
Okay.
Everybody, does Jonathan sound good? Do I sound good? Any issues there? You guys let us know before we get going live. I forget there's like a 17-second delay, so I have to wait a little bit.
Yeah.
Dude, I love. Seriously, can you get your face off the screen for a second? I want to see what's behind you.
Market your message.
Oh yeah, I love that, dude.
Yeah, my wife took our logo and blew it up, and so I, in anticipation of the book, did a rebrand. Originally it was Blogging Your Passion. We still have that website up, but we've rebranded around Market Your Message because since I started that blog in 2011, like the media has just, podcasting and what we're doing now, live streaming and all this stuff is like grown up around us. And so I decided to go for something that was a little bit more evergreen. Marketing's never going away and a message is never going away. So that's what we went with.
Well, let's actually say everything you just said again in about 10 seconds. I want to start there. I'm actually going to start there. Okay. That is the name of your podcast, right?
The name of the new, I rebranded the Blogging Your Passion podcast to the Market Your Message. We do a live stream and then it gets stripped out and becomes a video for YouTube and a podcast for Market Your Message. So we do something that sounds like what you're doing. We do like a pre-party. I do the content, and then I do an after party, and the content piece is what gets stripped out into a podcast and YouTube video.
That's a whole thing. Okay, I'm going to just start there. I'm going to just tell you to move your head again. All right, so I'll be silent for 5 seconds, guys, and we'll jump in. Well, Jonathan, welcome, my friend.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
So we were literally just talking before we went, quote unquote, live about what's behind your head. And so I was like, hey, get your head out of the way. Big head viewers. No, I'm just kidding. Move it because I wanted to see this because funny story, this happens when you rebrand a podcast, but it suddenly just showed up in my, on whatever what is the app called is it just called Podcasts on Apple? I don't even know. It's the purple thing.
Yeah.
I think it's just called that. Anyway, that's what I listen to because I'm old school. I have Spotify and never even use it. And I saw this Market Your Message. I'm like, what? Oh, okay. It's Jonathan. And so we were just joking about how that transition happened. I actually think that's kind of a cool starting off point because you're known for blogging your passion. You're the blog guy. And now you have this thing that has, at least on the surface, has nothing to do with blogging. So you kind of walked us through a little bit of that, but let's dive deeper as we start off here. So tell us about that whole transition.
Yeah, totally. So a couple of thoughts, just maybe this would be helpful to anyone. So I think it's important to get known for something, and then you can always pivot or expand later. And so for me, I just started with blogging. I first built a blog, not talking about blogging, into income, and that became my full-time thing. And then I decided I want to start teaching blogging. And so I started that back in 2011. And a curious thing kind of happened. In 2019, I did a 2-day workshop in-person event. And I kept talking to the attendees, And so many of them are like, yeah, I don't blog. I don't blog. I podcast. I do videos. And I'm like, but the event's called Blogging Your Passion Live. But like half of the people I talk to don't blog. So I'm like, this is interesting. So why are you following me? And obviously, everybody I talk to is like, well, Jonathan, you also podcast and you do videos, you do webinars, you live stream sometime. And I'm like, you know what? I think now, and especially in preparation for this new book that's coming, that just came out, just got released this week.
Yeah.
It's not a blogging book. It's more about how do you take a message that you have and use today's media and leverage that into building a business if you want. And so that is kind of how the process worked. And it just made sense that, with the book coming out, we had a goal of, a good 6-9 months before that, that we wanted to rebrand. And basically we bought, marketyourmessage.com. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how it started.
Well, that's awesome. And I mean, that's exactly, I love what you teach and what we teach are very similar because we get asked a lot like, well, I have 7 passions and I want to, and I don't want to be known as just like the organic tomato guy. I want to be known as like the farming guy. I'm like, we'll start with organic tomatoes, become the world's leading expert on those. And people are just going to assume, the halo effect, which I'm sure you've heard of. Brendan Burchard talks about this, where it's like if you're the organic tomato expert, people are just going to assume you're the organic squash expert too. But they're not going to assume that until you become like the guy for organic tomatoes, until they find you because of organic tomatoes. And that's just a very like niche
Yes.
down thing. But like, you're not going to be like the productivity expert or the like self improvement expert until you're the fitness expert and just the fitness expert. And isn't it funny? We look at like people, you think about like an actor like The Rock. And now the Rock is known for fitness and he's known as being like a motivational speaker and he's got all these brands. But what did he do? He started with one thing. He became like a really great actor, which happened after becoming a really professional wrestling is acting, but he became a really great actor, and so the halo effect just kind of took place. And I think what you did is a really good example of that because I know you probably a couple of years ago wouldn't have called yourself a podcasting expert or a live streaming expert or a marketing expert, but enough people thought you were that eventually you kind of became one, which I think is pretty
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah, and I think that what's encouraging on that note is that where you start doesn't mean that you can't pivot. You can always pivot later. You can always pivot later. I pivoted from, I don't do the career coaching anymore, but even when I did the career coaching, I niched into accounting and finance professionals. So what happened was I still had about 30% of the people who wanted to be coached by me that were not accounting. They were following the blog. They were like, you have great articles on getting interviews and negotiating salaries. So I want you to help me prepare for my interview. I'm not an accountant, but I like your stuff. And so you will still attract people that are not in your niche. But I'll never forget something Ray Edwards said to me once I was interviewing him for a summit I was doing. And literally while he said it, I'm like grabbing a paper and pen and writing it off to the side. And I'll never forget it. He says, the more specific you can be, the more powerful your communication becomes. And
I
like, that's
remember
it.
us talking about that, dude.
That is it. Like, think about it. If a CPA fell on my blog back in 2009, 2010, and they saw CPA career coach, are they more likely to want to work with me? Yes, because they're like, Jonathan knows how accounting and finance careers works. He knows me, even though I don't know them, right? So that's how it works. The more specific you can be, the more powerful your communication becomes. And I saw this too with you, Matt, years ago when, you probably told this story 100 times. Everybody saw you as the affiliate guy, right?
Yeah.
And finally you're like, okay, I'll own it. I'll be the affiliate guy. And that's when I saw your business just really begin to take off. And it was just like, it was awesome to see because like, what happened next? This is what I saw on my end. Like the content and all of the goodness just started flowing out. It's like every time I was on your website or checked something out, like you had just had like another nugget, another thing about affiliate marketing. It was just awesome to see.
So, it's kind of cool to hear that from your side because, um, I mean, it certainly it feels different from our side, but I mean, I will say from my side, it was like what used to be we're a day ahead on content if we're lucky, and it's a struggle to think of content ideas. And I, I mean, we have a backlog of stuff that is so deep at this point. And, I mean, literally, if you take spoken words plus written words, I mean, we got to be north of 10 million at this point. I'm
Wow.
just doing the math. If you think about, how long a 10-minute podcast is when it's transcribed, and then you take the post that we've written and multiply by that by the number of them. I mean, I'm just doing, okay, 10 million is actually really way off. I mean, just doing some quick math, I mean, we're talking about 800 times, 2000, so 1.6 million. Still, like,
Mm.
that's what, 100 books. That could be way off. I'm terrible at live math. It's like 4 books actually. No, but like the average book is like 75,000 words. So whatever 1.6, somebody do the math for me.
Yeah.
Whatever 1.6 million divided by 75,000, that's how many books I've produced in terms of content, which is just insane. And so I want to go back on your journey though to when you first started. And like again, you were in the career niche. You didn't know a whole lot about marketing,
Mhm.
admittedly, but now you're really, really good at this stuff, and it's fun to watch. So, like, let's just go back to then and say, okay, if there were 3 things I could teach, newbie blogger Jonathan about marketing, what would those 3 things be?
Yes. So the first thing I would tell him would actually not be a marketing technique at all.
Hmm.
What I would tell him is this: your present courage in this moment right now, like people's future help depends on it. So let me say it another way. Their future help depends on your present courage in this moment.
Mm.
And I did this at, but again, pre-COVID when we did our live event. The night before we did the event, I said I want to go back into like my YouTube because I've had a YouTube account for years. I want to go back to like my first video, and I went to show it back when I was doing career coaching YouTube videos.
Was it painful to watch?
Oh, and the reason I wanted to show it is because I wanted them to see how bad it was. Like literally, like just
Yeah.
embarrass myself. Like what a great way to kick off an event. Here's how embarrassing I was on video. And here's what was interesting. It was exactly 10 years to the day of the live event. When I saw that in my hotel room the night before, I just like leaned back in my chair and I was like, 10 years ago today, I posted my first YouTube video. That was admittedly awful,
Yeah.
but it took courage to
Yeah.
like do it. And if I could like hop in the DeLorean and go back to my former self, the first thing I would tell them is, Jonathan, there's a whole room of people waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
Just publish it. Like, just have the courage. And we see this all the time. We hear stories of, Amazon starting in a basement and, um, Disney started in a barn with his animation studio, and Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and all of them starting in garages. And but we forget that, you know what, all of us, we need present courage. So that was the first thing I would say is you got to have present courage. And that's why you have to really believe your message matters, and that, you know what, my message does matter, because it's not about me. If my message has the ability to change someone's day or change someone's life, then I have a responsibility to share it.
Man.
And so that's the first thing is if we can have all the marketing tactics in the world, but if we're not right in our
Yeah.
head, if we're living with doubt, fear, delay, it doesn't matter what we know. We're not going to take action.
I don't want
So
to. I don't want to go. I don't want to gloss over that one. I think you would agree. I mean, um, so much of marketing, so much of being an entrepreneur, building business is it's all up in your head. It's all in your mind. Um, One of the analogies I share, we just did a training a couple of weeks ago that we kind of brought back from the dead, and I mean, the response has been amazing, right? And one of the things I say in there is like, the old saying, when the student is willing, the teacher will appear. And it's fun because we did this on live video. So we did it on Zoom. It's the first time we've ever done this where I can actually see, I don't know, maybe 25 people who had their camera on. I can see them, and seeing the reaction when I say this. I say, when the student is willing, the teacher will appear. And there are thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of people who are willing, and they are waiting for you to
Hmm.
appear. And it's like you see this shift in people, like visibly on camera. I remember one of the ladies just went like that. Like she was like, "Oh my gosh, I never thought of that. That some number of people, the person they need is me. They're not going to
Hmm.
learn from that guy. They're not going to learn from that younger woman. They're not going to learn from the person who, grew up rich or grew up poor for that matter. Like they're going to learn from you." And that can be really hard for people to wrap their head around, that like, oh my gosh, my message matters. Like the exact thing, the exact story that I have, the relationship that I had with my dad or I had with my mom, or that I had, where I grew up and the experiences I had, like that matters to potentially hundreds of thousands or even millions of people. Even if it's just 10,000 people, it matters to them. And I'll just remind everyone, 10,000 people is a college basketball game, like an NCAA Division One, maybe not like the highest level, but it's bigger than Duke's basketball arena. I'll just put it that way. That's me
Yeah,
picking
I've
on Duke
seen
for having a
inside
small
of Duke's.
basketball
It's
arena.
not very big.
Yeah, 9,800 or something. It's tiny. It's like a high school gym basically. I don't like Duke. Anyway, so I just wanted to park there for just a minute. Like, okay, so I want to go back just that very first video.
Yeah.
I'm always curious because this is a question I love asking. That first video, not the first blog post. We can hide behind a blog post. Like if people don't like my writing, whatever. Writing was easy for me, at least. I don't know about you, but that first video, what was it that held you back from that? What was like the number one thing?
I didn't like how I sounded, didn't like my voice. I didn't like how I looked on video. I felt like it
Still
made me
don't.
look fatter than I was.
Uh-huh.
I didn't like any of it. And I felt like I've always struggled with my personality is more laid back, easygoing, Mr. Practical. I'm not the crazy sounding guy, charismatic, showing off the bling bling and the Lamborghini in the driveway and all
Wait,
that
what?
stuff.
That's not you. You're not gonna be
No.
like, okay. Can I stop you there? I
And
saw
so
this.
for a long time, I thought, you know, it, if I have to be like that to like build a business teaching people about marketing, then maybe this is wrong for me because I
Yeah.
can't be that. And I used to doubt whether or not my personality, my style, just being who I was, would be attractive.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of people, other people may feel that way too. And here's what I've discovered, and it took me a while to get it, is the way I stand out is to be more like me. The more authentic I can be, the more unique I become. And that's true for anybody.
There you go.
And
So true.
and it's so much easier, right? Because I've seen so many experts out there that they're just, and I talk about this in the book, they wear themselves out because like their masks start in masking COVID-19. It's probably doesn't not the best illustration, but you know what I mean, like a full on mask pretending to
No,
be
yeah.
somebody we're not. Pretend to be somebody we're not. That weighs heavy on us after a while, right? It's like
Yeah.
and you begin to doubt if people will just accept you for who you are. So when you try to be something you're not in order to be accepted, even if you are accepted, it still doesn't fit because you still wonder if people accept the real you, right? So that's where, for me, going back to the video, we all, and Jeff Goins said that perfectly in his book, Real Artists Don't Starve, that you have to just get used to practicing in public.
Mm.
And your first videos aren't going to be that great. Neither are your podcast and probably your blog post. But you get better. You will get better as you do it. So those are my thoughts.
So true. Like for years, we've been saying, take off your mask, take off your mask. It's crazy what 6 months can change, right?
The
Like,
analogies
dang
don't
it,
work anymore.
that whole message just went out the window. It's
No,
like
don't
it
work.
means something totally different. But it's so true. I mean, I asked you that question. I love to ask that because usually it's the same stuff. I don't like the way I sound. I don't like the way I look. I say too much. I can't think of the next thing I want to say. And I have to, I don't want to, I don't want to take 3 hours to edit the video. Then don't take 3 hours to edit the video. It's one of the things I love about doing, live streams. And I want to talk about your content strategy because you mentioned it before we went live real quick.
Yeah.
And then remind me, I got to get back on the 3 marketing. I asked you for 3 lessons, and we're gonna hammer this one home. But everybody says the same stuff, and they say those things, and they, that's the thing I love about live streaming is like if I say most people don't even notice it unless it's like every third word, and nobody expects the audio and video to be perfect on a live stream. It can't be terrible. Like you might want to be hardwired and have a good mic, but it can't. It doesn't have to be perfect like you think it does on a podcast or video. And dude, I'll tell you that kept me. Nobody knew what I looked like. What I really looked like for 4 years after I started blogging. It was the same thing. I was like, they say the camera adds roughly 85 pounds, and apparently made me sound like I was underwater and I was 12 years old. And I didn't like that. I was like, this is terrible. So I just didn't do it. I didn't do it. And then finally one day I had a message and I recorded a video for myself to write a blog post. And thankfully, I the next day didn't have time to write the blog post. And I said, well, what the hell? I'm just going to throw this video up. And I threw the video up and it got more comments than any post I had written in 6 months. And people were like, we love it. We love it. And I even kept in the part where I was like, actually, wait, don't include that. Make sure to write this differently or something. Like it was just a completely unedited video with me looking down with my triple chin because I'm looking down like that on a cheap phone. And I didn't even realize, but I was turning. And if you watch the video long enough, you will literally get, what is that thing where people get dizzy?
Vertigo.
Yeah. Vertigo. Like the video will give you vertigo. And it still was the most popular thing I did all year. And I was like, light bulb, I need to start a podcast. I need to start doing videos. Like 2 months later, I had a podcast in a YouTube channel, like that. So I love that.
Awesome.
Get used to practicing in public. That's huge. Okay, so let's do 2 more marketing things. If you go back to Jonathan, and I forget when did you even start? Was it 2000?
2009, January of 2009 is when I started my first blog on career coaching.
Let's go back there. You get to tell little Jonathan 2 more things. What would they be about marketing?
Yeah. So first one is get comfortable creating an obscurity because that's where we all start. We all start creating an obscurity. Right? And it doesn't mean your stuff's not valid because you don't have 100 comments on your blog post, because you don't have 1,000 downloads. We all create an obscurity. A classic example is, John Lee Dumas. People told him he was crazy for doing a daily podcast. And I forget the exact numbers, but he even talked about it. Like it took a little while for people to actually catch on to his daily podcast, even though he was hustling and publishing it daily. So get comfortable creating an obscurity. I actually talk about this in the book. It's a really, really great story. And I forget what chapter. I think it's actually the chapter about create. I talk about Charles Dickens and how Charles Dickens spent 3 years writing for the London Evening Chronicle for no payment. 3 years. Didn't get paid. Never really got much feedback, but he kept doing it. And then guess what happened? Suddenly a publisher approached him and said, I love your writing in the London newspaper. I want to compile it into a book. Became the Pickwick Papers, sold over 500,000 copies. Wow. That's incredible. So what if he would have given up? What if he had said after about 3 months, you know what? Why am I writing this article for this newspaper? I'm not getting paid. It's not doing anything for me. He did it for 3 years. So get comfortable creating an obscurity because you're building a body of work. This body of work is good and you're getting better in the process and you're going to be able to reuse this or use it again in the future. Yeah. The second thing, or the third thing, I guess I would say, And I wanted this to be in the book because I see this all the time working with people, and it was true for me too. And that is, I use analogy. I say, become a farmer. Now, it sounds really strange, but you live in Indiana. I grew up in Indiana. There's farmland everywhere. We get it. And the illustration is
That's all we
this:
have here.
for a season, measure your actions more than your results. Now, results are important, but what often happens is so many of us measure our results too soon. And that's why we give up, right? That'd be like a farmer planting his seed on the first day one, going to bed like in exciting anticipation. The morning comes up, the rooster crows, he runs over the window, pulls back the curtain, looks out, and where's the knee-high crop? Right? Well, we do the same thing. We look at that and we say, that's ridiculous. A farmer has to just till the field and keep sowing and keep tending to it. You know, the harvest is coming. What happens for a lot of us, and even there was times when I was ready to give up, is we want those results so bad. We want them so bad right now that we don't give ourselves enough time. We plant in the spring, we water in the summer, we pull the weeds only to give up before the harvest. And that's what I would say. Those would be my 3 tips.
Yeah, I love the last one. Like, I know so often, and I fall into this because I'm an analytical person. Like, I love stats, and I would be like, "Oh, that episode got 62 downloads, and that one got 88. So the 88 one, oh, that was better." You know, and it's like, no, it wasn't. It could have been anything. It could have been that one person shared it on social media for an obscure reason. It had nothing to do with the fact that the title was better, or, oh, that's what happens when you release a podcast on a Wednesday versus a Tuesday, or a Monday versus a Thursday. Like, there was no reason. And so I love that. It's like, if you just go head down, Seth Godin talks about this. I know we've got a podcast coming out with him. I just realized it comes out on election day. That'll be fun. Um, and like, one of the things that he talks about is just put your head down and do 100. Just get 100 of something out. Then
Yeah.
you can look up and say, okay, well, what were some of the results? You can start to learn from it.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 50. I don't know. He says 100. He's a pretty smart dude, so I'd go with that.
Yeah.
Man, I
And
love those.
what's cool about that, Matt, is like, what's the worst that can happen? I mean, seriously, what is the worst that can happen? You got better? Like, if you got better and that's the worst, I mean, that's a good trade-off to me. Like, if you do 100 episodes of podcasting and you're a better podcaster now we can decide to, what can we learn to do things a little bit different, or maybe we need to tweak things, but give yourself a season to just create and enjoy that creation process.
I love that. So I want to come back to the marketing strategy. And again, you have a podcast called Market Your Message.
Mm-hmm.
You also have a book called Your Message Matters. And so I want to go back to kind of the backside of that, which is the message part. And there's something that you talk about in the book, like, basically for people to define, guys, but there's a couple things I just want to uncover, not to tease people, really. I just want to tease them. So there are these 3 questions, and I just realized I held up 2 fingers when I did that. I have a habit of doing that.
I've done that
there's
so
these
many
3
times.
questions that people need to answer to define their message. What are those?
Yes. So just like you need heat, oxygen, and fuel to start a fire, I believe to have your message defined, and this is what stops a lot of people, right? They feel stuck because they haven't really defined their message. It's really 3 things: purpose, people, and passion. Purpose is, what is your unique gift? Now, for so many of us, and this was part of, I told my story in the beginning, and my story was a guy who could not figure out what he wanted to do in life. I was all over the place. I never did what I studied for in college. I started being a high school teacher. Then I stopped doing that, did a call center job at night, real estate investor, an executive recruiter for a while, wanted to start my own business, failed at different businesses, started blogging. So I'm all over the place, right? But here's what I discovered. I came across out of print book. My wife, actually, here's a copy of it. My wife bought me. This was made in 1915. It's called Acres of Diamonds.
Heard of it.
And I talk about this in the introduction because this was revolutionary to me.
That's why I've heard of it,
And
actually.
Acres of Diamonds was a book. It was actually a lecture before it was a book, written by Russell Conwell, who was the founder of Temple University. And he gave this lecture to the students of Temple University. And it was essentially, there's a lot in the book, but the part that really got me was his fable. It was about an African farmer who wanted to find diamonds. Like, all the rage was in Africa was these people were getting wealthy finding diamonds. So this African farmer sold his land, went out in search of wealth. And he looked high and low, spent all of his money, ended up drowning himself in a river. Sounds like a sad story. Meanwhile, the person who bought the farm was walking on the farm one day and saw something shiny in the riverbed, looked at it closely, and discovered it was a diamond.
Hmm.
As they began to cultivate the land, it became the world's richest diamond diamond mine. And the moral of the story is this: you don't find your purpose in life out there in a thing. And if anything, we learn this right now. Jobs can go away, your position can go away, your title can go away, your thing, your dream job, those things can go away. But what you find your purpose in is what's changeless about you.
Mm.
And that is, what is your unique gift? What is that thing that you have? And you got to do a little bit and we talk about in the book how to discover this, but you got to discover what that is. That's your purpose. And then people is, who do you want to serve? And we've already talked about that a little bit today, but getting specific on who you want to serve. And then passion's the third thing. And the way that I like to define passion, because passion feels like pressure, right? I got to find my passion in life, or I have so many passions. Here's the way I define it. The way I define passion is, find a problem you are passionate about solving for the next 2 to 5 years. Find a problem you are passionate about solving for the next 2 to 5 years. So when you find that passion, that thing, for the next 2 to 5 years, feels less pressure, right? Who are the people that you need to serve with that? And then how are you uniquely wired so that you can show up best for those people? And when you have nailed those 3 things down, and we talk about it in the book, you can single that down to a single sentence, one sentence that gives you confidence that I now know what my message is. And that I've seen that with people that we've worked with, that like it's unlocked possibilities for them. It's like created an awakeness in them that they're excited about what the days ahead look like, because they know their purpose, the people they want to serve, and the passion, which is the problem they want to solve. So that's what that's about.
I love the 2 to 5 years thing, man, because it really takes the pressure off. Like, it's not limiting you. Like, our passions evolve.
They do. They change.
You know, I think about, you know, I won't name names, but a friend of mine in the internet marketing space who's been around for 16 years, and you know, now that he's, you know, he's got about 14 years on me, so he's a little bit older. Now that he's older, and he's kind of, I mean, he's made more than made it, and he's helped tens of thousands of people. It's like he realized he didn't want to just teach the marketing side. He wanted to really help the holistic entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Well, he couldn't have done. He couldn't have come out in 2004 and said, "I want to do that," because he didn't even know what it meant. You know, and I kind of, to go back to the crazy example of, you know, organic tomato farming. It's like, well, if that's the only thing you know how to grow, then just go ahead and start doing it and help people solve that problem. Over time, you can learn how to grow the other fruits and vegetables. You know, you can learn how to, you know, niche in different directions, and how to urban farm, and how to, you know, do all that stuff. But when you're first starting out, like, do the thing that you know how to do. And I mean, even I think of my friend Alan Thomas. He, you know, he started off as like, all he really wanted to do was help obese businessmen to drop weight, you know, to get over the mindset. Well, then he realized we can also help women, and I can help businessmen. I can help like people who are employees, and it's like just kept expanding and expanding and expanding. And yeah, I mean, that's so powerful. So I want to touch there just real quick. One of the things that you talk about, uh, we're talking about message, and you're gonna define the unique gift and who do you want to serve. You're gonna solve that problem for 2 to 5 years. One of the things you talk about as we build our business, and this is again what you've done over the last 11 years, and it's been really cool, just by the way, to see you evolve because when we first connected, you literally were a blogger and like nothing else.
Yeah,
you know and
that's it.
yeah,
I was just a bootstrap blogger. I never even did affiliate. Like you introduced affiliate, like I did affiliate marketing on my
yeah.
blog post, but I wasn't doing like affiliate launches or anything like that. Like you brought that world to me.
Did I really?
Yeah, you did.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's really cool. Now how that never came up in conversation, but and so you got, yeah, I mean, you've been doing all these things. You built a very a thriving business. Actually, I have two questions. We'll talk about. I want to talk about revenue streams in just a little bit, um, but because you just made me think of that with affiliate marketing. But like you talk about these 4 steps to growing the business, and you've been through these 4 steps over the course of 11 years. But it starts with this: believe your message. Okay, just on the surface, I'm gonna throw a hardball at you because I'm gonna challenge you on that because that just seems like it's kind of too easy.
Yeah.
Seems like it's too basic. So I want you to explain why in the heck that's the first step in growing your business is believe your message because I'm hoping people are kind of past that, but it seems like your experience is telling you they're not.
Well, and here's the proof, right? I did not have this as part of this was not even in the book proposal when it got accepted.
Hmm.
So what I did after the publisher accepted the book proposal and I'm like, okay, I'm definitely writing the book. The very first thing I did was I surveyed my list. I did the Ryan Levesque thing. He's a mentor of mine and said, I'm going to survey my list to make sure I want to use some of their language and what they're telling me in the different parts and sections of the book. And so, we got back hundreds and hundreds of responses in a spreadsheet. It took me weeks to go through it. And people had these long responses. And I think the question was like, when it comes to marketing your message, what's the single biggest challenge or frustration you've had? And what kept coming up over and over again was the belief. I don't believe I'm good enough. I don't think I have value to share. Why would anybody pay me for what I know? All those things. And it caused me to go, wait a minute, back up the truck. I can't just launch into this thing assuming people are in the right space, like headspace, right? For all of us. And also, it was true about me too. If I were to go back in time, those were the same questions that I battled. I even battled it when I was writing the book. I mean, believe it or not, I don't know how many times when I was writing this book, this is what my inner critic told me. Jonathan, this is too good of a title for a writer like you. You don't have a big enough story. You don't have a big enough understanding. Like this should be written or reserved for somebody who's a better writer, has got a better story, better experience. And I had to keep silencing that person when I was writing the book.
What are some of the ways you did that? I want to go there real quick.
Yeah. Well, but for the belief part, especially as messengers, and I define like what a messenger is. It's anybody that has, advice to share online. You're a messenger, regardless of what you're doing. But it starts with us, right? If we don't believe that we have something to share, if we don't believe in our message, if we don't believe in those things, then it doesn't matter what the marketing tactics are. It doesn't matter how much knowledge. And I think this is what happens for a lot of people is if I just learn a little bit more, then I'll feel comfortable taking an action. And I can't fail if I learn it all, right? Like make sure I learn it all first. And really what it is, it's a belief problem. And so that's why you got to start there.
So what you go through, I mean, clearly the book ended up being written. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You silenced those voices. I mean, how often were those voices coming up and what are is there any particular thing you did to silence them or did you just kind of push through?
Yeah.
What did you do?
I think you're talking about Seth Godin. I think it was the messy middle. it was kind of like I'd written all the fun chapters that was like, oh yeah, this was fun, because like with a nonfiction book, you don't have to write it from introduction all the way through, nor should you. Start with the thing that you feel most comfortable with. So like, oh man, this writing thing this is going to be easy. I'll have this manuscript done in no time. Yeah. 3 months later, when I'm like staring at this going, what am I going to say on this chapter? I need a story. I need an illustration. I don't know what to put. And then the words aren't coming out quite right. And then I start thinking about the deadline, the publisher wants it back by this particular time. And then that's when all the doubts start coming in, right? Like, am I going to make this? Am I going to be able to do this? And then also it's that you have this period of time where you're writing without feedback. And so you begin doubting, like, when I turn this manuscript into the publisher, are they going to be like, oh, I can't believe I got this person assigned to me, like, this is terrible.
Rewrite the whole book.
We got to rewrite the whole thing, right? It's all those things that can that we have to constantly push down, and still do our work.
Yeah. And I think it helps. Your results speak for themselves. I mean, you've helped thousands and thousands of people. We saw Phil. Phil Card was just saying that, he loves the fact that he's got two of his favorite guides in one place. I know one of our mastermind members, Gwen Marasco, is a huge fan of yours, and I mean, your name comes up. I don't want to exaggerate, but it comes up once a month in our mastermind meetings. We only meet for 4 hours a month, so once a month's pretty high level. Gotta be honest with you, and I just think that's a testimony, and I think knowing that you have helped those many people, okay, well, that certainly helps. But let's back up for the average person. Maybe you've only helped 42 people. Still, man, 42. Like, you helped 42 people solve a problem that was a source of pain for them. Like, that's why I keep reminding people, like, there's no problem too small to solve. Like, no matter what the problem is, it's a source of pain for people. If your phone is not getting good reception in your house, yeah, that's a total first world 2020 problem, but still a source of pain if you'd like to see your grandson, on FaceTime, and you can't because your phone's not working. And if you can help people solve that, you just gave them the gift of seeing their grandson. Like, that's pretty cool. So I think that's super powerful. So one of the things that you say in the book that I think is super, super powerful, speaking of that, it's definitely it kind of goes back to the mindset side. And I'm going to quote here. You say, the goal of an expert is to prove to everyone that they are the expert. So I want to stop there. A lot of people are thinking, Matt's sort of talked about, being the expert, and Jonathan's the expert at this, and blah, blah, blah. I'll just point out, Jonathan was not the expert in this in 2009 by any stretch. Then you say, the role of a guide is to simply serve others. And I think this is super powerful. You say, stop trying to be the hero and start serving others as a guide. I don't know if I have a question there.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to say that was freaking powerful. So I don't know if you just want to like comment on that or elaborate on that in relation to your journey, because I love that.
Yeah, I think what stops a lot of people is they don't feel like they deserve the expert title, so that keeps them from starting. But can you be a guide? Yeah, you could be a guide, right? We could be a guide. We can say, you know what? A guide just is simply someone who asks good questions. A guide is something who says, well, have you thought about this? A guide is someone who says, well, here's what I found. Here's what I learned. It's much easier to be the guide than it is to try to be the expert. And I think when we try to be the expert, we feel like we got something to prove. And as the guide, and it actually can go back to like what we hear all the time from Donald Miller and Brand Story, Story Brand, where he talks about that you're not as as the guides, we're not the hero, right? The people we want to serve are the hero, and we're the Yoda. We are Mr. Miyagi. We are Gandalf,
Yep.
but we're not the hero. We're the guide, and it's a fun role to play when. And I know you've seen this, Matt, when you've been able to just guide people, encourage them, give them education, empower them, and then to see them do something amazing, that's rewarding in and of itself. You know, the fact that we also get paid to do it is a bonus, right? And it's like we get to have that direct impact. And so for me, and I know, there's nothing wrong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the term expert, but I think for a lot of us, that's what we just like, I want to do this thing, but I can't because I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm not experienced enough. No, this throw the expert thing out the window. Let's just choose to serve people and be a guide. You can do that.
Yeah. I love that, man. I mean, that is so powerful. And so, gosh, I have like a million other questions for you, but in the interest of time, I want to encourage people to get this book. Um, I just want to read, I mean, just what a couple of people have said about this, Jonathan, with you on, because I know this will make you feel good. I mean, Michael Hyatt said it's a game changer. It's a game changer for aspiring writers, speakers, and coaches. Um, Dan Miller, you're doing something special for others and yourself by reading this book. Like that is super powerful. Our friend Steve Olsher, he talks about you're gonna nail down your purpose, your passion, and your people now more than ever. This book is mandatory reading. Those are powerful words. Some guy, I don't know, this guy's kind of shady though. I shouldn't read this, but in a world full of pretenders and pseudo gurus, I had to look up and see if that was actually a word. I don't think it is.
Well, it got in the book
Milligan,
anyway.
yeah.
Right now.
As you guys have found, Jonathan Milligan is the real deal. He shows you how to quickly stand out and be heard in a noisy world and ultimately build a business and a life you love. And that second part is so important, just like he's done himself. That's the other thing. You're not positioning yourself as the expert. You're positioning yourself as a guide, and I love that. I've watched him grow his business from scratch the same way he teaches in the book. Read it now. Matt McWilliams, host of the Affiliate Guy podcast. You guys should be listening to that. It's a great podcast. And I mean, I say that because it's like this is a who's who of experts and guides, people whose opinion does matter, and they're saying these amazing things about the book. And so, as we wrap up, just one last question because I don't want to not acknowledge the times we're living in. I think there's unprecedented, at least in our lifetimes, stress. Whether it be election stress or COVID stress or literally like fear of death is more prominent right now. And I'm not here to debate whether or not that's valid or not. It just is. Like we're thinking about it, and there's all these things, and now the weather's turning colder and people are going to be grumpy in a couple of months. And so like it may seem like it may seem like a bad time to try to venture out and do something like this. And I just want to maybe just take a minute to speak to those people who are sitting there going, yeah, I think I may have a message. I think I may want to start a business. Now is just not the time. What would you say to somebody who says that right now?
Yeah, I got a couple quick thoughts. First one is I started my blog in the middle of the Great Recession, like literally when things were falling apart. That's when I started. So, and there's evidences of so many companies that they start in a downturn. But this is what I would say beyond that. And I used to teach this all the time in doing career coaching. Anytime there's a life transition or a career transition, however you want to say it, there's pushing and pulling factors, sometimes both. A pulling factor is when you go to your cubicle every day and you're doing your job and you're like, this is not what I signed up for. I want to do something else. I want to be a speaker. That's something that's pulling you away. But there are also pushing factors. Now, pushing factors are different. They usually come along when you are fine. You're very comfortable in what you were doing. You were in your routine. Life was good. Everything was normal. You got up every day and you did the same thing. You found it very comfortable. And then COVID comes along. And then a company downsizes. You found out your job's going away. Those are pushing factors. What's happening right now is both are happening. There's both pushing and pulling factors happening. You either are like, I am fine in my job, but now I feel like this is pulling me to like do the thing that I've always wanted to do, or step out and write that book, be a speaker, blog, podcast, whatever it is. And there's that pulling factor. But some people, it's pushing factor. Now they're like, wait a minute, everything shifted and changed. Now I feel like now might be the time to do something different. And so that's why I think there's a lot of businesses that start in the middle of recessions, because you have those pushing and pulling factors happening at the same time.
That's powerful, man. Well, Jonathan, thank you, brother. I appreciate you being with us today. This has just been awesome. It was so good to hear a little bit of your story and some of the thoughts that I'm excited that you're sharing this message, because as you've shifted and as you've done that pivoting, it's just been fun to hear you talking about some of these things versus just the like mechanics of blogging and all that, which was great. It was awesome. I think you're better at this, if I can say so myself. Like, I'm more excited about this than anything you've ever done. I'll just say that. I'm really excited for you, bud.
No, I appreciate that. It's been exciting to launch this book and even start seeing some of the early feedback. It's been pretty awesome. Even got my first picture day. Someone sent me a picture and said, Jonathan, just saw your book in the bookstore in Omaha, Nebraska, of all places.
I just saw that on Facebook.
So I was like, wow, that's cool. There's evidence that it is out there in a bookstore somewhere, which I guess is a pretty good accomplishment in the middle of a pandemic, that you have a book that's in a physical store instead of just, online somewhere. So
that's awesome, dude. Congrats.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, and happy to come back anytime and chat. And I appreciate you and what you've been to me. You've helped me in so many ways understand a whole world of my business that I didn't even know existed. And in fact, I've got some affiliates promoting my book launch right now, and I learned how to do that from Matt McWilliams.
That's awesome. It's kind of meta, because like when you sent me the info sheet, I was like, that looks familiar. Where he learned how to do that? Oh wait, that's right. No, dude, love it, man. We're gonna have you back on to talk. I'd love to have you back on maybe in the spring to talk about this book launch and some of the things that you learned. So we'll have
Good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah. I want to hear all of it. I want to hear all of it. So we'll talk about that. All right, buddy. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.